If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, you know how much I love our military and their families, and I want to make sure that they all had a beautiful and blessed Veterans Day. It is also, by the way, Polish Independence Day, and I just posted on my Twitter, on X, a picture of me and my father and a picture of my young dad, because my father was a Warsaw Upriser who was rescued by American troops. So it's fitting. It's Polish Independence Day, and it is also Veterans Day in America. And when my father saw what he thought was a mirage, young fighting men who told him he was free after he escaped from a prisoner of war camp and was 90 pounds and 6 feet tall, my father knew that this was the greatest country in the world, and he couldn't wait to come to this great place called America. And he was forever grateful of the brave men and women, the best of the best in the U.S. military. So I hope you guys get a chance to look at the picture of my handsome dad, who is now smiling from above. He passed away a number of years ago, but he truly represents, to me, two of the greatest countries, the two greatest countries in the world, the United States and Poland, who are stalwart defenders of freedom. And today, beautiful marches all over the country honoring our brave men and women. And President Trump, who clearly loves our military, I have talked to the president so many times about his love of those who have sacrificed, those who have served. Today, he spoke at Arlington National Cemetery, and he talked about how blessed we are to have the greatest fighting force that God has ever made.
Every captain of industry, every pioneer of science, and every star whose brilliance has lit up the lights of Broadway all share one thing in common. They only had the chance to soar because the veterans had the courage to serve. They took care of those people. They took care of all the stars. The stars that you read about wouldn't be here without our veterans. Everything we have, everything our country has achieved has been purchased by the muscle, spine, and steel of the United States military. We owe it all to the fierce and noble men and women of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, and the United States Marines.
And God bless America. By the way, it was the 250th birthday of the U.S. Marines yesterday. So this is a great time to be able to show off our stars and stripes. And meantime, some breaking news tonight.
Breaking news.
This is a wild post just coming out a little bit ago from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, dropping what a lot of people are describing as a political bombshell. Caroline Leavitt, again, President Trump's White House press secretary, saying, quote, "I am more than ready to show the evidence. Governor Gavin Newsom of California is being investigated for a criminal scheme involving the registration of illegal immigrants to vote through his universal mail-in ballot program." Obviously, if this is confirmed, this would be an enormous, enormous scandal. Leavitt says the evidence is being compiled and will be released soon. I want to read that again because that is wild. The White House press secretary putting out, quote, "I am more than ready to show the evidence. Governor Newsom being investigated for a criminal scheme involving the registration of illegal immigrants to vote through his universal mail-in ballot program. And boy, it brings up a lot of questions about voter integrity, which is all too important, especially now with so many different absentee ballots and so many other issues. Earlier today on Katz and Cosby, we were talking with Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, who was talking about how Republicans, even after everything that happened in 2020, they have still not done some things that they should be in terms of speaking out to make sure that everybody feels good about the election process. Voter integrity. What can you do to make sure one person, one vote, so everybody feels good about it? So there are a lot of questions tonight. And boy, oh boy, it looks like Caroline Leavitt is clearly putting Gavin Newsom on notice. And you know Gavin Newsom is definitely eyeing a potential presidential run. There is no doubt about it. He didn't rule it out when he was asked about it the other day. The only thing I can say is thank goodness Zohran Mamdani can't run. Remember, he was born in Uganda. You got to be born in this country. Because tonight, also, we're hearing from Bernie Sanders, who says that he thinks Mamdani is sort of the model for the new Democratic Party. And he hopes to have other Mamdanis in every city across this country. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what will. Isn't one bad enough? My goodness. And as we're talking about California with Caroline Leavitt, the protests outside of UC Berkeley got downright violent. One guy, get this, his name is Jihad. Yeah, that's a real name. The protester's name is Jihad. He grabbed the cross off the neck of a guy at a Turning Point USA rally. And it's really disgusting to hear what these protesters there at UC Berkeley were chanting. There were all these riot police that had to get called in. All it was a pastor and a comedian speaking at Turning Point USA. I mean, it couldn't be more tranquil. It couldn't be more inspiring. And yet these people were going crazy, these, Antifa individuals. And they were shouting at the Charlie Kirk crowd, these mothers and daughters and people who are coming to this crowd and shouting at them these horrible, vile things. And then now here it's been 2 months since my friend Charlie Kirk was murdered. And they were chanting some horrible things, this crowd, these protesters chanting, "You're dead, homie." That's what they were chanting, "You're dead, homie." I.e. Charlie Kirk, it was a good thing. How disgusting is that? He was assassinated. The whole world saw it. And they're out there chanting and cheering like it's 4th of July. What is going on with some of these young people in America that have no sense of values of this country as we're talking about Veterans Day? No sense of appreciation of how great our country is. No sense of understanding that this is the best and the freest country in the world, but you should not cross a line and be disrespectful to others. We talked earlier today about maybe bringing back the draft. John Catsimatidis suggested it. I think it's a great idea because I think people would feel a greater attachment to this country if they had something invested in this country. You think of some of these other countries where there's a mandatory 1 or 2 year draft. What about like 6 months or a year where young people have to be a part of the military or some sort of form of public service so they feel emboldened, so they feel the love of this country that all these veterans do today and that I do every single day and all our military does every single day because they put their lives on the line for us. And to now see some of these young people that are out there protesting in the streets, whether it's at an event there at UC Berkeley or whether it's Black Lives Matter, is it a problem of the colleges? Is it a problem of the homes? Is it a lack of values? Or is it a combination of a whole bunch of stuff? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And here's some of the sounds of some of the protesters last night chanting, again, at mothers and daughters and fathers who are coming for a prayer, peaceful event there at UC Berkeley. And then this is what they were met with outside.
Home.
Wow. Can you imagine? You're just taking your daughter for what looks like a beautiful, peaceful, inspiring evening to hear Charlie Kirk's words, light a candle, say a prayer, and you got these people out there screaming fascist at you as you're walking in the door and celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. I think we're really into a very dangerous period, and I am also very worried with Zohran Mamdani about to become mayor of New York City, since the Democratic Party is kind of showcasing him like he is the model for all these Democratic cities. Because remember, he said these protesters, it's First Amendment. So I guess if protesters get unruly, is that First Amendment too? If I guess protesters take somebody hostage, like a janitor at Columbia Hall in New York City, is that First Amendment too? If they break into Macy's and start robbing things with about 1,000 other people, is that just First Amendment too, Zohran Mamdani? Boy, oh boy, New York City and America is in for a rough, rough ride. And here is Alan Dershowitz talking about Antifa, the group that was outside UC Berkeley chanting those vile things about Charlie Kirk.
Well, you know, Berkeley tried to ban me from speaking a few years ago, and finally the dean of the law school invited me, and I was allowed to speak, but Antifa protested and threatened violence against me if I spoke. And everywhere I speak, Antifa comes after me. I need to have armed guards when I speak in any part of the country or in Canada where Antifa is present and where they threaten violence. They are a terrorist organization that incites violence and that encourages violence and that is anti-Semitic to its core.
That is for sure. And speaking of anti-Semitism, I want to play, this is cut number 26, because speaking of just what New York and America is in store for, I guess the model that Bernie Sanders just think is the greatest thing in the world. Zohran Mamdani, who's the new mayor-elect of New York City, was asked, what do you think of this Cornell Medical Center? They do a lot of research that's tied in with Israel. They do a lot of sharing because Israel has some great, great medical research, great technology, and they partner with them. Now, remember, the BDS group, the DSA and BDS group, one and the same, they came out and said, here's their list of demands of what they expect Zohran Mamdani to do. And he's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, so he's happily probably going to go along with all of these things and then some. And so the new thing that came out recently in the last few hours was that he was asked, what do you think of this sort of sharing like at Cornell? Because this list came out of things that he doesn't agree with, or at least that the DSA doesn't agree with. And again, he's a member of it. It's about divest city pension funds, end city contracts with companies that do business with Israel, anything tied to Israel. Everything's we hate Israel. I mean, it's really shocking to hear this. And so he said, he was asked, well, what do you think about Cornell and this sort of medical sharing, this information sharing? And his answer was, well, we'll have to look at what the international laws are. Meaning, we'll have to look at what the international court says. And the international court, of course, has been against Israel and Netanyahu. They're the ones who said that Netanyahu should be arrested, which is the most preposterous, ridiculous political decision. But it gives Mamdani his reason to say, oh, let's look at what the international laws, as if they have any rules over New York City, which is just preposterous. But it just shows that this guy is going to be dangerous. This guy is going to try to talk like word salad. In other words, he didn't say no. He essentially said, yeah, I guess maybe they should end a relationship because, quote, the international law is against Israel. And so I'm going to go by that, which nobody in their right mind would ever do. But Zohran Mamdani is going to use that left and right. And that just shows this is a bumpy road. I want to play this real quick before we go to break. This is Cut 26. This is Alan Dershowitz's reaction to that.
As I speak to you right now, I'm looking out of my window at the Cornell Medical School on Roosevelt Island because I live right across from there. It's one of the most beautiful buildings, and it's helping to cure cancer. And Mamdani wants to end research between Israel and the United States. Israel is the most innovative medical technology country in the world today. And Mamdani wants to deny the sick people of New York, the children who have cancer, the benefit of Israeli cancer research. What a thug. What an impossible person.
Bravo to Professor Alan Dershowitz. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Can you imagine? They want to help cure cancer, but, if they have any ties to Israel, bad, 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 according to the crowd hanging around Zohran Mamdani. 1-800-848-9222, and we'll take your calls when we come back here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And let's go to your calls, guys. 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to the Rita Cosby Show on this great Veterans Day night. Let's go to Timothy in Brooklyn, line 4. Go ahead, Timothy.
Good evening, Miss Rita. Happy Veterans Day and happy early Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too. You too.
This is Renaissance Man, as you named me many months ago.
Hey, I love that. I remember now. I recognize that wonderful voice, Timothy. Go ahead.
Thank you so, ma'am. I'm going to be quick. I just wanted to say on something that you spoke on a few minutes ago. You know what? These kids today are so emboldened and they feel so entitled that now I wasn't familiar with your friend Charlie until, the day he passed. But even still, whether I knew him or I didn't know him, I would never get down in that way of disrespecting at an event and saying what those young people said. And you know what also, Ms. Rita? A lot of these kids today, they're not being prepared for the future. Let me share something with you on a quick. When I was 15, my mother told me that when I turned 17, I had to walk up the block and register for civil service. I didn't know what civil service was, and then she explained it to me. But that was the protocol because she was very corporate in that respect. So everything was, in that way. And she prepared me. She just didn't drop bombs on me. Well, this is what you're going to do today. This is what you're going to do tomorrow. She said, no, this is what you have to look forward to when you turn this age, when you turn that age. This way, because she raised me to be self-sufficient and independent.
But that's it. Timothy, you also clearly, now I know that the Renaissance man had a great mom, because your mom obviously taught great value.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we could calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming to you from Long Island, New York, where just recently my good friends at Fox Nation awarded the awesome DJ Daniel the Young Patriot Award in a televised ceremony, thanking him for his work in making law enforcement cool again. Fox News anchor and fellow WABC radio host Brian Kilmeade said during the awards presentation that the Young Patriot has defied the odds, crisscrossed the country, collecting law enforcement badges and breaking a world record in the process. DJ Daniel, of course, was famous when he was acknowledged by President Trump during the State of the Union. And I think he warmed the hearts of the whole country and the whole world at that moment. DJ has joined more than 1,300 law enforcement agencies, including the U.S. Secret Service, after being inspired by Houston police officers to become a member of that department. Now, DJ's father shared his son's heroic story there on the stage, detailing DJ's fight against terminal cancer and his initial prognosis of just 5 months to live. Then he went on to share how DJ developed a desire to become a police officer and how it gives him and his son inspiration every single day. Well, we are talking about Zohran Mamdani, and boy, oh boy, is New York going to be a mess and America a mess, because today we have Democrats all over the place saying he's the model. And in fact, John Fetterman was asked, who do you think is the leader of the Democratic Party? He said, I don't really think we have a leader. I don't really think anybody. And then Bernie Sanders was asked the same question without even flinching. He's like, Zohran Mamdani. So we have a radical Islamist, Democratic socialist, who's the model for America. God help us, boys and girls. This is going to be a rough one. And here is Zohran Mamdani in his own words, because it seems like at every twist and turn, and it wasn't that long ago, Zohran Mamdani talked about the two things he doesn't like the most, and that is the NYPD and Israel. And he lumped them all together. Here it is.
You know, I think in the first question, there is this setting up of a context where this idea of hyper-local and international. And I think that for anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. Right? We have to make, not specifically that example all the time, but just to say that for working class people who have very little time, who have so many stresses, who are under so many pressures, there isn't that much time for symbolism. We have to make it materially connected to their life. And I think that what opportunity we have is that we are in a country where those connections abound, especially in New York City. You have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
The boot of the NYPD is on your neck, laced by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Wow, wow, wow. And here he is, of course, saying what he would do to Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, if he came to New York and Zohran Mamdani is mayor.
And Mayor Mamdani, would you welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu to New York City for whatever he comes for, given the U.S. is not a signatory to the ICC, so he can travel to the U.S., unlike a lot of other countries. Would a Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Even though the U.S. is not a signatory to the ICC?
No, it's time that we actually step up and make clear what we are willing to do to showcase the leadership that is sorely missing in the federal administration.
That is shocking. And he seems to be sticking around this. And I love this. Ina Vernikov, who is a New York legislator, she came out today and said she's thinking of inviting Netanyahu to New York for January 1st. when Zohran Mamdani gets inaugurated. Can you imagine that? Hey, I have a guest for the inauguration, Mr. Mayor-to-be. His name is Prime Minister Netanyahu. That would be great. I'd love to see Netanyahu just kind of standing there in the front row, sitting in the front row, honored in the front row as he should be, and watch Zohran Mamdani just seethe as he takes the oath to become the next mayor, the 111th mayor of New York City. Well, here is Professor Alan Dershowitz, because we talked with him today about Netanyahu, and he said, guess what? If he comes, he will be right by his side. Take a listen.
And I dare him to arrest Netanyahu. I would urge my friend and my client, Bibi Netanyahu, to come to the United States on January 1st. I will walk with him to the inauguration and challenge Mamdani to arrest him. You know what the result would be? Mamdani will go to jail for violating U.S. law and putting international law. I don't know what he means by international law. He probably means
I think he means the International Criminal Court. That's how I took it. That crazy decision,
well,
right?
You know how that started. The man who prosecuted him, who issued the arrest warrants, was accused of rape. And we had a deal. I made the deal. I was involved in it. I'm not just an observer. I'm a witness. I arranged the deal whereby Khan, the prosecutor, the rapist prosecutor, would go to Israel, interview all the leaders of the Israeli military to see whether or not warrants are justified. He said he was going to do that. His assistant agreed. We made plans. And then he got charged with rape. And as soon as he got charged with rape, he was told by his friends, accuse Israel, send out warrants, go after Netanyahu, and they're going to forget about your rape. And that's what happened. So the idea that Mamdani would enforce an invalid rape-caused legal document like that to dominate under American law. Under American law, the mayor of New York has no authority to arrest under the International Criminal Court. That's a decision to be made by Washington, by the Justice Department, and by the White House, but not by Mamdani. And if he dares to do it, there are going to be legal consequences for him, and I will be involved because I will be standing right next to Netanyahu. And if he wants to arrest him, he's going to have to go through me.
I love that. Bring it on. I think Netanyahu should be invited. I think he should be in New York City. I think he should do a speech on the steps of City Hall. Because remember, when you speak, it's free speech, right, Zohran Mamdani? That's what he said about the pro-Palestinian protesters. I think there should be a big event highlighting Netanyahu right there, right near City Hall. And let's see how Mamdani feels about free speech at that moment. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. Let's go to Mike in South Carolina. Mike, what do you think of my idea about Netanyahu? I think you should absolutely come. I think you should be there for the inauguration, don't you?
I love that idea. That's a round of applause for that idea. And let's see what the devil Mamdani, what his reaction would be. And outrageous, I want to first say, Rita, and I'll get back to Mamdani in a second, Veterans Day. Always raise a glass for veterans. And I called you last year, a good friend of my dad's, when they were growing up on Long Island, Uncle Paul.
That's right.
Bethpage, 98, he died, and 82nd Airborne. And the funeral mass was on my birthday, May 11th. I was not there physically, but I was there spiritually.
Oh, I'm sure. Wait, and now how old was he when he passed, Mike?
He was 98.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Those 82nd guys, I'm telling you, I went to Normandy, and I think so much about them coming in. The 82nd and the 101st coming into San Maria Glise and all those other towns right there. They really, they were the opening throws of the invasion before the guys stormed the beach.
Yes, without a doubt. And I was lucky. The last year of the draft was 1971, Vietnam. I worked with a lot of Vietnam vets, City Transit and Metro North. And I was a junior in high school in 71, and they were limiting. In the draft, they were they eliminated a lot of protocol, whatever. They just did not. They were de-escalating troops, is what I'm trying to say. That's right. And in Vietnam, so anybody who served, and what I said a few times to you, Rita, every time I'm down here in South Carolina, originally from Nassau County, every time I see somebody with a shirt or a hat who's a veteran, I always acknowledge him. Always.
Bravo.
You know?
Bravo. And I think I told you this, Mike, too. I have probably bought cups of coffee for probably a couple hundred veterans at least. Because I always say, hey, can I get you something? Can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a hamburger? Right. Can I get whatever it is? Because I feel like, you know how personal it is for me. When I think about the young men that were on that other side of the river and told my dad, you are finally free. And that's how, when my dad saw that American flag, you know, my dad was Polish, as you guys know, and he couldn't even speak English. And he told me that he kept looking at the uniform and the guys were pointing to American flag. And my dad said when he saw that American flag, he cried because he was, he was in Germany. You know, you think about the risks. He had escaped from a POW camp. He's starving. Wasn't sure if they were going the right direction. And if he ran into the wrong group, it was certain death. And so when he came across that river and he saw those troops, he just was smiling. And he said he cried and all he could say was, thank you, thank you. And he said he remembers them saying, you're free, you're free. So for me, I believe every day should be Veterans Day. And I know you feel the same way. And I'm so glad that I'm thinking of my dad and I'm thinking of your uncle too also, Mike. And thank you for sharing that story. Now I know also it reminds me again of why you are so patriotic also, my friend. Thank you, Mike, so much. Thank you. Let's go to Reggie in Texas on line 5. Go ahead, Reggie, on this Veterans Day here on the Rita Cosby Show.
First of all, I'd like to kind of expound on what you and that gentleman were talking about. I think we should have a Veterans Day or Veterans Month appreciation.
I agree. And you know what I love? I love, earlier today on Katz and Cosby on WABC, which I host with John Katz, we talked to Tony Orlando. And I love Tony. Tony's a dear old friend of mine. I adore Tony. And Tony was the Grand Marshal of the Dallas Parade, by the way. Reggie, where are you in Texas?
I'm in a town called Beaumont. It's about 80 miles from Houston. It's 40 miles from the Louisiana border.
Sure. I know where Beaumont is. I've been through Beaumont. I know where Beaumont is. So he was the Grand Marshal today of the parade there in Dallas. But he talked about how he's now working with a whole bunch of groups. And Tony's always been so big into giving back. But he was talking to me and all of us about, first of all, the importance of appreciating veterans and going into schools across the country so young people understand the price of freedom and appreciate real role models among us. Because, you think about there's a lot of people out there and celebrities and this and that. These guys, especially the greatest generation, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, every single one of them, you guys, World War I, sadly, no more do we have those. But the World War II guys are fading so quickly. There's not that many of them left. And he talks about the heroes among us and teaches future generations. Because I wonder how different some of these people would be if they had great role models in their homes, if they had people teaching them and explaining the price of freedom and growing up in that environment. What do you think, Reggie? Do you think, I don't think they'd join an Antifa. I don't think they'd be out there on these college campuses. I think they'd be staying home and kissing the ground that they're on as opposed to trashing America. What do you think?
I agree 1,000%. Luckily for me, my brothers and sisters, we had a dad who taught us to respect and love the flag. And I grew up in an era, I'm in my 60s. I grew up in an era where returning Vietnam veterans were disrespected. And my dad made it abundantly clear to us that if we ever disrespected a serviceman or the flag, that there would be hell to pay. So I learned that. I passed that on to my own kids. And here in Texas, and when I think of people when they burn the flag, Miss Rita, my first thought is disrespecting someone who's fought for that. And there's plenty of ways for you to make your opinion known. And and share your thoughts with people. I don't think you need to disrespect the flag. I know people think it's a freedom. It's a freedom. I don't think the freedom, your freedom ends at the end of your fist at the end of my nose. You don't have the right to disrespect me to make your point. You can make your point without disrespecting people. And I find the burning of the American flag to be about as disrespectful as you can get to this country.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't like it when I see, like, some of those athletes who are kneeling. I hated that too, Reggie, because I feel like, to your point, when I hear the anthem, I think of the men and women who have sacrificed for our freedom. And to me, it's disrespectful. It's an honor to them that we stand and we recognize their service and we recognize this great country that they fought and many of them died for. And our veterans too, just as you said. And, I wonder so much, Reggie, too, like if these people understood what really at a young age, the price of freedom and what it means, to live in a country where they're not free, where if they burn the flag. I mean, when I see these people, chanting, I want to, Gaza has great freedom. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Have you been to Gaza? Have you been over to those areas? Because if they dared burn, can you imagine if they tried to burn a Hamas flag or a Palestinian flag in Gaza? They'd last about 5 seconds. And so when I see these people disrespecting and disrespecting the freedoms of America, it gets me so angry. But I think we have to do what we can to make sure that they appreciate it, make sure they understand it. And I also agree with President Trump. President Trump has said he doesn't think burning the flag should be allowed. He understands freedom of expression, all that stuff. And yes, we are the greatest country in the world because of that. But you can't burn somebody else's flag. You can't, quote, destroy property, especially if it's somebody else's property. So I think we need to start enforcing that more and throwing the book so these people will really love our country, which truly is the greatest country in the world. And I hope that these young people start waking up and we can enforce that and teach them those values. If not, we're going to lose our country. And that really, really saddens me. Reggie, thank you so much. Such an important message on this Veterans Day. 1-800-848-9222. And we'll continue your calls when we come back here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with his plight?
Aha!
Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at Canva.com.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And coming up in the next hour, we're going to give you the latest on the government shutdown. Also talk more about Zohran Mamdani and so much more. I love Alan Dershowitz saying that he will be right there by Netanyahu's side if Netanyahu decides to come on January 1st to New York. That would be great, just to troll Zohran Mamdani. I love it. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Rose in Long Island. Line 1, go ahead, Rose.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for taking my call. First and foremost, I just want to say how grateful I am to our men and women in the armed forces.
Absolutely.
I just wonder, oh, fabulous. I tell you, I got so emotional watching those bands and playing the patriotic songs that really touched my heart. And I just couldn't help thinking of what the Gold Star families think of this creature, Mamdani. He's a disgrace. He enjoys all the freedoms and liberties that these guys fought for and died for. He's got some nerve. But what I wanted to say is, you could play his game. I would not, if I were king of the forest, I would not import one thing from Uganda. I wouldn't export one thing from Uganda. And I would encourage our allies to do the same thing.
That's an interesting thing. You're right. And you know what? You know what's interesting about the whole Uganda? Remember, during everything, he said, I don't know that woman who he was standing next to. And remember, he proclaims to be a guy who is supportive of gay rights. And it turns out the person standing next to him in the picture was this woman who's pushing for one of the most strict rules in the world against gay, relationships, where it's essentially either a life in prison or even a death penalty in Uganda to be gay. I mean, it's shocking. It is so shocking, and yet apparently that woman who pushed that bill in Uganda is a friend of the family. So there's a lot more than meets the eye to Zohran Mamdani. He has a nice little smile, but I'm not sure about anything he stands for.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.